Welcome back, lovely ladies. If you want to become the woman of your dreams, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And join our Patreon for even more exclusive content. Now, let's dive into today's story.
I sat on the edge of my bed, studying my reflection in the full-length mirror. My name was Leslie, and I had always admired the uniforms worn by a certain chain's waitresses, the tight orange shorts, the snug-fitting t-shirts, and the way they seemed to carry themselves with confidence. They looked cheerful and alluring, every curve accentuated. Whenever I saw them at work, serving baskets of wings and pitchers of beer, I felt a pull inside me. It wasn't just a uniform to me. It was a kind of secret desire I could never quite name. At home, when no one was around, I had tried on a similar outfit I'd found online, short orange shorts and a tight white tee that was supposed to mimic the look. I tried pairing it with a padded bra and some shapewear, attempting to make my reflection match the image in my mind, but each time I caught sight of my face, the makeup slightly off, the contours of my body still too angular, too obviously male, my confidence faltered. I would try again and again, and each time I got a bit closer, but never close enough. Still, I had always kept the dream alive that maybe someday I could look the way I wanted to look. That dream took on a strange new shape when I received a letter from the Human Resources Department at the company where I worked as an accounting assistant. It was a routine Tuesday when my supervisor, a woman named Carrie, stopped by my cubicle with a letter. "Leslie, you've got something from HR," she said, handing it over. I thanked her, puzzled, and waited until she was gone before carefully opening the envelope. The letter explained that next year, on October 23rd, the company would host a city-wide event. They wanted a group of employees to perform in themed costumes, and apparently, I had been chosen to appear as an owlet singer. The letter asked me to meet with Janet from HR for further details. I had never heard of an owlet singer before, but the letter's tone suggested that they imagined a polished, attractive woman in a uniform that seemed suspiciously close to the one I had been secretly coveting. Confused, I reread the letter. They must have taken my name Leslie for a woman's name. The letter mentioned I had indicated on my resume that I sang in a quartet back in school. They wanted me as a female singer for a special event. How could that be? Still, I was curious. The next Monday, I knocked on Janet's office door. She greeted me with a bright smile, and after we exchanged some pleasantries, she got straight to the point. "Leslie, I'm so glad you came," she said. "Your application noted that you have a singing background, and your name led us to believe you were female. We found out that you're actually male, but we're still interested in having you as part of our owlet singer group." I raised my eyebrows, completely baffled. "I'm sorry, Janet, but I don't understand. The owlet singer is supposed to be a woman, right?" Janet nodded. "Yes, that's the image we had in mind, but there's a catch. The planning committee is intrigued by the idea of showcasing perfection in costuming and presentation. We'd like to see if you can convincingly appear as a woman. If you're willing, we have over a year before the event. We can help you get the right look. If you can pull it off, I think it could be a big boon for your standing in the company." I stared at her, astonished. "You mean work as a woman here?" She shrugged. "If you like. We can adjust your records and arrange it so that no one here will make any trouble. It's your choice. You can say no, of course, but think about it. This might give you a chance to explore something new. If you want to do this, we'll help. If not, we'll find someone else." I didn't give her an answer immediately. I left her office with my mind spinning. On one hand, it felt completely unexpected and odd. On the other hand, it aligned disturbingly well with the private thoughts I had carried for so long. I had always wanted to try looking like those waitresses, and now the company was offering an opportunity to not only perform as a female singer, but to do so with full support, possibly even financial backing. I called my mother that evening, visited her at home, and told her what Janet had said. Instead of being shocked or dismayed, my mother was surprisingly calm. "Well, Leslie," she said, sipping her tea, "I've known for a long time that you were interested in certain kinds of clothes. You tried on my skirts a few times, remember?" She gave me a soft smile. "I'm not judging you. Maybe this is an opportunity. Do it only if it's what you want." What did I want? I had no idea where this would lead, but the excitement alone made my heart race. The next morning I marched into Janet's office and told her I would do it, but only if I could look perfect. She grinned and said she'd support me all the way. Over the next few days, I researched transformation specialists. I found a boutique run by a woman named Madeline who specialized in helping clients appear as women in every detail. Her website hinted that her services went far beyond just clothing and makeup. When I called her, she grilled me with questions about why I wanted this, whether I was being pressured, and what my goals were. Caught off guard, I ended up telling her more than I intended, that I'd always harbored these feelings, that I truly wanted to experience life in a female role. Madeline eventually invited me to come in with my mother. She said she never took on a client without meeting them first and making sure it was right for them. I didn't fully understand what right meant to her, but I agreed. On a sunny Saturday, my mother and I went to Madeline's shop. It was discreet, located in an upscale part of town. Inside, it smelled of lavender and cedar. Madeline looked to be in her 50s, elegant, poised, and kind. After an hour of talking, she said that if I was sure, she could help me. We discussed what would be done, body shaping, prosthetics if needed, and more subtle changes to ensure no one could tell I hadn't been born female. I left the shop that evening in shock. The next day, I returned alone and spent nearly 8 hours under her direction. By the end of that session, I emerged with a curvy figure, smooth skin, a feminine face, and a body that felt entirely new. I had never imagined such a transformation was possible. The mirror revealed someone else, a young woman who bore a slight resemblance to my old self, but with softer features, gentle curves, and a presence I never thought I'd have. I left wearing a simple skirt and blouse. My own clothes felt foreign now, and walked to the car. My mother was waiting, and when she saw me, she gasped softly, "My goodness, Leslie, you look lovely. I suppose we'll have to start calling you Anne, as you said you preferred. Leslie Ann." At home, I marveled at every new detail. The gentle bounce of my chest when I moved, the curve of my waist, the way my new hairstyle framed my face. It was thrilling, but also terrifying. I had to learn how to move, how to speak more naturally. More than that, I had to get comfortable in this new role. I scheduled a day at a full-service salon, my mother's suggestion, where they waxed, styled, plucked, trimmed, and pampered me. By the time I was done, I was unrecognizable from the timid accountant named Leslie. Now I was Leslie Ann, with manicured nails, layered hair, a tastefully done face of makeup, and a wardrobe my mother helped assemble: dresses, skirts, blouses, heels, lingerie, everything a professional young woman would wear. My first day back at work in my new identity was a whirlwind. Janet barely recognized me at first, but once she realized who I was, she clapped her hands excitedly. She changed my records to reflect Leslie Ann, and I started going by Ann for simplicity. The men in the office suddenly seemed attentive to me, offering to help carry files or fix my computer. The women were curious and warm, inviting me to lunch, asking where I shopped. It felt both validating and overwhelming. My boss, Howard, tried to be charming, inviting me to dinner, which I politely refused by inventing a fictional boyfriend. The office girls laughed at my tactic and warned me that he hit on every attractive woman who started working there. By midday, I was fitting in better than I could have dreamed. At lunch, Megan, one of my co-workers, teased me about my fictional boyfriend. "You know, Anne, I have this cousin of my fiancé's who's just become single," she said. "He's tall, handsome, and I bet he'd love to meet you. You want to give it a try? We have a family gathering on Friday, and he needs a date." I had little dating experience even as a guy, let alone now as a woman, but it would help maintain my new persona, and I was curious. "All right," I agreed. "Set it up. But if he's an axe murderer, I'm blaming you." "He's a plumber, not a serial killer," Megan said, laughing. I spent the rest of the week feeling nervous. I prepared by getting a new red sheath dress that hugged my figure beautifully, showing off just enough curve to hint at allure without being too revealing. When Friday came and he picked me up, I was stunned by how handsome he was. Greg was tall, muscular, with an easy grin and a confident manner. Over dinner, we talked about our backgrounds. He joked about his work. "Push in, turn right, everything flows downhill, and I get paid on Friday." I laughed, enjoying his humor, and he listened intently when I described my job in accounting. He seemed entirely captivated by me, and at the end of the night in front of my home, he kissed me. I had never been kissed like that. My heart raced, and afterward I floated into the house with my cheeks warm, feeling something I never had as Leslie. That weekend, I decided to move out of my mother's home. I was growing into a new life, and it seemed right to have my own apartment. I found a small but cozy place downtown with a modern kitchen and bright windows. My mother helped me move in, gifting me dishes and pots, urging me to cook for myself. I bought some furniture and spent a few days arranging it carefully. Now I had a space of my own, and space. I continued meeting with Janet and the 3 other singers selected for the event. We had a year to get ready. To our surprise, legal issues arose. The original costumes and branding we intended to use were prohibited by a restraining order. We had to rethink the theme. The other singers, all women, were relieved. "I never liked those tiny booty shorts anyway," Carol said. We decided on flashy sequined dresses, each a different color, paired with elegant wigs and heels. The plan was classic glamour rather than a direct replica of any existing brand. But just as life seemed to be smoothing out, Megan rushed into my office one afternoon. "Anne, did you hear about Greg?" Her face was pale. She handed me her phone. On the local news, Greg's house was surrounded by police, ATF, and hazmat teams. Megan explained breathlessly. "They're saying he's a major drug dealer. They found huge amounts of drugs, cash, guns, everything." I felt a wave of shock and dread. He had seemed so charming, so kind. By late afternoon, detectives arrived to question me. They asked how well I knew Greg, and I explained we'd only had one date. Megan backed me up. They seemed satisfied that I was not involved, just an unfortunate acquaintance. Still, it rattled me. The first man to ever kiss me in my new life turned out to be a criminal. Later that evening, I sat alone in my apartment sipping tea and trying to calm my nerves. A few days passed, and I received another visitor at work, one of the officers who had questioned me. A patrolman named Daniel, broad-shouldered and clean-cut, gave me a friendly smile. "I'm sorry to bother you again, Anne. I wanted to let you know the investigation is ongoing, but you're in the clear." Then he hesitated, clearing his throat. "Also, I'm hungry, and I'd like to take you to dinner if you're free." I blinked, astonished. After what I'd just been through with Greg, I was wary, but Daniel's eyes were honest and warm. Without quite understanding why, I said yes. That evening, we met at a small Italian restaurant. The conversation flowed easily. He talked about his family, growing up with 3 siblings, and how he joined the force to do some good in the world. I told him about my job, my singing plans, and my recent adventures in fashion. He laughed when I recounted my boss Howard's clumsy flirting. This time, at the end of the night, when he walked me to my door, he held my hand and gently pressed his lips to mine. It was not as intense as Greg's kiss, but it felt safer, warmer, and somehow more real. After he left, I realized I was starting to imagine a future where I didn't have to pretend so hard. I was settling into myself, though I refused to call it anything fancy. I was just living as who I'd chosen to be. Over the next several weeks, Daniel and I went out a few times, always innocent outings, a movie, a walk in the park, a dinner at a cafe. We discovered we both enjoyed classic Motown and oldies music, which I found helpful since our singing group was leaning towards that genre. He told me funny stories about his training days, and I mentioned the costumes we were considering, sequined dresses in bold colors. He grinned and said he'd love to see me in one someday, but life threw another curveball. The police department changed Daniel's shift, making it difficult for us to meet. We talked on the phone often, but it wasn't the same. Meanwhile, my body continued to change with the treatments and hormones Madeline had helped set me up with. My shape softened, my figure became more naturally feminine without special padding. My confidence grew. I began singing lead on some of our practice songs. Carol, Tanya, and Becky, the other 3 singers, complimented my voice and my presence on stage. As the months passed, we refined our set list. Our group decided on classics from the 50s and 60s, doo-wop, Motown, and early rock and roll. Our dresses were ordered, 4 sets each, red, blue, white, and black, each one knee-length with subtle sparkles under stage lights. We rehearsed dance steps, harmonies, and stage presence. I learned how to move gracefully in heels, how to strike a pose that looked good on camera, and how to use subtle gestures to accent the beat. Just as I was feeling on top of the world, Megan brought bad news. "Anne, I heard something about Daniel's family," she said carefully. "Apparently his mother has strong opinions on who he should date, and it might be complicated." I didn't want to hear it, but Megan insisted I at least know what I was getting into. Daniel soon confirmed Megan's warning. He invited me to meet his parents at a dinner his mother organized. I dressed carefully in a sleeveless shirtwaist dress, modest yet elegant. When we arrived at a country club outside the city, I was surprised at the formality. His mother, poised and tastefully dressed in a black sheath, greeted us with a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. Within minutes, she started probing, asking if I planned on having children, whether I considered myself suitable for her son. When I explained that I could not have children by birth, she pursed her lips. She insisted real family was all about blood. I stood my ground, mentioning I was adopted and deeply loved by my own parents. She made a snide remark about wanting a real woman for Daniel. With that, I'd had enough. I told her bluntly that times had changed. Not everyone marries someone chosen by their parents, and adoption does not make a child any less family. It was a tense standoff. Daniel noticed our raised voices and escorted me outside. He was furious at his mother and apologized profusely. I told him to take me home. In the car, the silence between us was heavy. I finally broke it. "Your mother wants to choose your wife, and she doesn't think I'm good enough. This will never end well." He tried to convince me otherwise, but I knew better. That night, after he dropped me off, I considered my future. Could I handle a lifetime of battling his mother? A few days later, a visitor came to my office, Daniel's sister, Jennifer. She explained their mother's background, how she tried to arrange marriages for both children, and how Jennifer had refused. She said their father had finally stepped in, chastising their mother and putting a stop to her attempts at controlling their futures. Jennifer told me Daniel truly cared about me, that he had confronted his mother and made it clear he wouldn't tolerate her behavior. Jennifer hoped I would give Daniel a chance, but my heart was tired. I did not want to spend my life in constant conflict with a woman who disrespected me. Later that evening, I called Daniel and ended the relationship. He argued, pleaded, but I stood firm. I had to protect my peace. I threw myself into the singing group. Our event was now less than half a year away, and we booked small local gigs for practice. Audiences loved us, and a few people recorded our performances, posting them online. Before I knew it, we had a modest local fan base. We performed Motown hits, girl group classics, and even added a few fun twists, like a quartet version of an Elvis tune, rearranged for our voices. We wore matching dresses and wigs, and the crowd always cheered when we hit our harmonies just right. At one of our rehearsals, Carol's brother Ethan came to watch. A tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes. He was quieter than Greg or Daniel had been. He hovered near the back of the practice hall, clapping politely after each song. After the session, Carol pulled me aside. "He likes you, Anne. He's just shy." I glanced at him. He caught my eye, smiled, then looked away. Something about him felt genuine, gentle. I decided to say hello. It started with small talk. "So, Carol's brother, what did you think of the show?" He blushed slightly and said, "I loved it. Your voice is wonderful." Over the next few rehearsals, Ethan and I talked a bit more each time. He was a construction engineer, strong and reliable. He listened more than he spoke, but he had a quiet sense of humor. One evening, after helping Carol put away sound equipment, he asked if I'd like to have coffee sometime. I agreed, and we ended up at a small coffee shop near my apartment. We started meeting regularly, often after my rehearsals or his long work days. We took things slowly. He knew I was once known as Leslie, but it didn't bother him. He saw me for who I was right there and then, and he never asked any rude questions. We talked about music, movies, our childhoods, and our hopes for the future. He admired my dedication to singing and asked about the upcoming event. I confided in him that I was nervous about the big show. He encouraged me softly, not with dramatic promises, but with steady confidence in my abilities. Months passed in a comfortable rhythm. My body continued to feel more natural. My voice, once just a good singing voice, became more fluid and expressive. The big event arrived. We wore our finest sequin dresses, mine was a deep red, and we sang under bright lights to a large and appreciative crowd. The standing ovation at the end brought tears to my eyes. Months of preparation and anxiety had culminated in something beautiful. After the show, Ethan waited backstage, holding a bouquet of white lilies. "You were incredible," he said softly. I smiled and thanked him. When I took the flowers, he leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my cheek. That moment stayed with me. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and I grew closer. He wasn't pushy or demanding. He respected my boundaries and was always straightforward about wanting a stable future. 2 years later, after countless dates, road trips, quiet dinners, and movie marathons on my couch, Ethan proposed. He took me back to that little coffee shop where we first had coffee together and slipped a ring onto my finger. I said yes immediately. Our wedding was simple: family and friends, a small hall decorated with flowers, music played softly by a local quartet. I wore a simple white gown. My mother cried tears of happiness. Carol grinned like a proud sister-in-law. The other girls from the singing group were my bridesmaids. It was a perfect day. Later, Ethan and I discussed having children. I could not have them naturally, but we agreed to adopt. We went through the process: paperwork, interviews, waiting for the right match. Eventually, we welcomed 2 children into our family, Jeff and Claire, both infants at the time of adoption. Over the years, they grew and thrived, loved equally by both sets of grandparents, doted on by aunts and uncles. My singing gradually shifted to a hobby rather than a professional pursuit, although the memories of that big event and our quartet's success still warmed my heart. In the quiet evenings after the kids were asleep, Ethan and I would sometimes talk about the twists and turns that led us here. I'd remember standing in front of the mirror in those orange shorts so long ago, frustrated by the shape I saw. Now those early frustrations had become distant memories, replaced by a more complete sense of wholeness in my life. I never labeled it with fancy words. I simply embraced my roles: a working professional, a singer who performed now and then, a wife and a mother. No path is without struggle. Some days were hard, filled with worry or arguments over small things like money or schedules. But we worked through them. I had found a partner who saw me as I was and respected the road I had traveled. I had found a career that allowed me stability and a creative outlet in music. I had a mother who supported me, friends who encouraged me, and children who knew me only as the loving mom who tucked them in at night. Life had led me down an unexpected road, and I had taken every step with hope. From being chosen to become an outlet singer at work, to transforming my appearance, to falling in love, breaking up, and finding love again. From a lonely desire to wear a certain uniform to standing on stage, shimmering in sequins and singing with true friends. To standing at an altar holding Ethan's hand, to cradling my children in my arms. In the end, the citywide event was just a stepping stone. The lessons I learned while preparing for it, the friendships I forged, and the life I built afterward mattered far more. I learned that while people's judgments can hurt, there are those who will stand by you. While some dreams end in disappointment, others lead to unexpected happiness. And while I never put a special name to what I went through, I understood that the path I took had brought me to a place of belonging and honesty, surrounded by people I loved and who loved me in return.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.